Welcome to the Improved Garage YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the sound system in the Mercedes. I did a previous video where I talked about why it sucks and why it needs to be improved. And then I just went through and recorded this entire video where I talked about the planning process, and OBS was blocking my whole Excel document, so nobody got to see it. So we're going to talk through a couple different options here. So we're going to go through an OEM-plus option and then more of a traditional aftermarket option. So if you haven't watched the previous video, please do. It'll make a lot more sense when I'm talking about the products and some of this stuff. So for the OEM-plus option, normally when you're doing an aftermarket system and you want to retain the factory head unit, you add a processor. That processor kind of removes all of the equalization from the factory head unit and gives you something that you can control and modify. Then you amplify that signal using an amplifier, and then you reproduce that signal using speakers or subwoofer or whatever you decide to add into the system. In the past, when I've done systems in like my GLK or my Ford Focus, I've often done front speakers, super high-end front speakers and a subwoofer, and no rear speakers at all. And that gives you a really good sound stage. It makes it really easy to do time alignment and make it so that the music sounds really, really good. Investing more money in front speakers where the driver is all the time just seems to go a lot further than buying like okay speakers for all corners. So our processor, which in this case is also an amplifier, in this case, we would use this Match M5. So Audiotec Fischer makes this kind of OEM plus gear for a variety of European cars. They support Audi, BMW, Fiat, Honda. I guess they have a lot of different cars, not just Europeans, but they're pretty popular in the European space. There's a dealer here nearby that I can get the products from. So they make a 5-channel and a 7-channel DSP. So we would do the M5 DSP, which this unit is $750. We would need a harness to connect that to the car. So if you go on their website and you check out this upgrade finder, you can see what, this fits my car with a standard sound system. This one was standard, this one with Burmeister, etc., etc. And then there's speakers and other stuff here, which we'll get into next. In my case, I would use this guy as my harness. And the 1.4 is 1 meter. They have a 2.4, which is 2 meters. They have different lengths. This guy's $150. Then speakers. So I've got a lot of different options when it comes to speakers. Sticking with the OEM Plus and having something that would be easy to install. Match makes components that drop right into the front door, so that's what these guys are. So factory tweeter location, factory woofer location, there's a crossover that goes in the door, and everything is made to be plug and play. So this is the part number for this guy. And I got a price on that last week. It is $250. So then if we wanted to do rear speakers, they have a rear speaker option, which are these guys here. And those are $190. Oops. So I've got our rear coaxes. And then here, these are $190. Okay. Now this DSP is already an amplifier, so that would run the speakers, that powers the speakers physically. The subwoofer, so there are factory subs in the, well, there's one factory sub in the car. You can add a second factory sub because there's a factory location. If you had the Burmeister system, you would have 2 subs to begin with. So you could put these in there and you can amplify them. So let's throw that in there just to kind of show what they are. And these are $600. And then ideally you would probably want some sort of aftermarket amplifier to run these to give yourself some more power, because this match DSP processor, that gives us, let's see, front and rear 40 by 6. Well, in high power mode it gets 4 by 60. So 60 watts a channel for the speakers, which is probably all you really need. And then for subwoofer output in high power mode is 90 or 1. Interesting. It's high and mid power, so the high power must be this guy. And then the 2 ohm output would be this guy. So looking at the subwoofers, where are they? Right here. They are cool. I think Crutchfield has these. We'll see if there's more information there. Alright, so it doesn't say what the impedance is, if these are 4 ohm or 2 ohm. Oh, 4 ohm, okay. So if I wired 2 of them in parallel, I would end up with 2 ohms, which means that the amplifier would run them with 320 watts. So that probably is enough. So that's really it. You end up with a processor, a harness to plug it in. It's all plug and play. You drop front components in, you drop rear coaxial speakers into the factory locations, you upgrade the factory subs, and this kind of does it all. Our total is $1,940. Now let's talk through an aftermarket setup, kind of like I've had in the past. Alright, so processor, speaker amp, and really there wouldn't be any wiring needed for the OEM-plus option because it's all built into the match. So this would have front components, you have rear coax, we would have aftermarket sub amp wiring. So what I've used in the past is a Audison Bit Ten. There are a lot of other options. You can do like a Mosconi 6 to 8. You can do a variety of different things. The Bit 10 is a good processor. It works really well. I think there's a new version of it now because they got bought by Hertz, so I think this is rebranded as something different now, but it's been around for a long time and it works fairly well. I've had good luck with it in the past and they're easy to tune. So this, if I remember right, was around $350 when it was new. For a speaker amp, I currently have a Mosconi One 130.4, which is this guy. So it's a 130 watts by 4 at 4 ohms, or 350 by 1 bridged. And this guy would be 800 new. Front components. So there's a couple different options here. We can do, a lot of people are doing these Morel Hybrids in the Mercedes. They're $750 for the pair. There is also a Focal 100, it's like an ES100K. I think that's them. Yeah, these guys. So a lot of people are doing these, But the people that have done these that have also tried the Morels like the Morels better because they have better low end bass, and it makes sense. I mean, these show a frequency response down to 50 hertz. The Focals show a frequency response down to 110 hertz, and the the Focals tend to be a brighter speaker in general. So we'll put this in here as ES100K / hybrid. They're both $750, so either way, that's what you'd end up with. Rear coax. In this setup, I don't think that I would do rear speakers at all. You can do, something like a 4-inch Morel, like, these Tempo Ultra Integras or something like that if you wanted to. These Maximo Ultra Coax, like there's a couple different options here. I wouldn't go crazy with rear speakers because they're in the back, and oftentimes you don't have passengers, it's poor imaging, so we'll do like these Maximos, we'll put those in there just as a placeholder. So we'll say 170 for those. Now, aftermarket sub. So the aftermarket sub that I currently own and would definitely buy again is this GS10D4 from AudioFrog. I have a D2 though, but same thing. Mine's just a dual 2-ohm instead of a dual 4-ohm. So this guy is a $350 sub, and then there's some sort of box needed. So we'll do $450 to add another $100 for a box. Okay. Next, we need an amplifier to drive the sub. I'm using an Alpine PDX-M6. Functionally equivalent model that's current would be about $600. They make a 750 watt V series now, so that would work just fine. So we have a couple different options there. And then wiring, this is probably, let's say, $200. So I'm going to need some speaker wire. In this setup I would need power wire for the amplifiers, probably a distribution block and a fuse block. I would need a speaker wire for feeds and out to speakers, and some other mounting materials, a place to mount the amplifiers, etc., etc. So all in, I'm looking at $33.20. Okay. Now, in my case, let's move this down here. Now, in my case, I actually own this guy and this guy. I don't own these yet. I don't have rear speakers, and I don't think I would do rear speakers, but I own this and I own this. So, that makes this 0, that makes this 0, this is 750. These I probably wouldn't do because I would just not have rear speakers. And then this I already own, this I already own, and that I would need to buy. So I'm looking at, about $950 for this section, versus up here, everything here I would need to purchase. So our OEM-plus option is a little under $2 grand. Our fully aftermarket option is $33.20. And then our, what I would have to deal with either way, if I go with this top option, it's going to be $1,940 because I have none of that equipment. If I go fully aftermarket, then it's about $950. Now, the way that I normally deal with my front speakers, and this is something that a lot of people do with more advanced sound systems, is I have I run my front speakers as fully active, meaning I power the woofers and the tweeters separately as 2 separate channels of the amplifier. So I use a 4-channel amplifier to run two component speakers, 4 little speakers, but all separate. And that allows me to adjust my crossover frequency to be anything that I want it to be. That allows me to individually tune every single speaker from a time alignment standpoint. Now in this car, I don't think time alignment's going to matter a real lot between the woofer and the tweeter, because the woofer and the tweeter are right next to each other. They're very, very close to each other in the door. In my GLK, my woofers were down in the kick panel or down in the bottom of the door, and the tweeters were up high in the door, so there was a fairly decent difference in distance between the woofers and the tweeters to your ears. You know, so this is kind of what I'm looking at. Now, I do have another option as well, which I'm thinking about. If I decide that I want to go fully active with my speakers, what I can do is I can go with AudioFrog. Now, AudioFrog actually makes separates. So if we go to car audio and we go to, so they have tweeters. They have a 6-inch, oh here, let's just go here. So they have a 6-inch mid, a 4-inch mid, a 2.5-inch mid, a 1.5-inch tweeter, and a 1-inch tweeter. So I've got a couple different options there. So I would probably stick with the GS series, which would give me a 1-inch tweeter, this GS10. And this guy is 219. And then I could use those as my tweeters, and then as a woofer, they have a 4-inch mid, this guy. So I could use this as a 4-inch speaker. So this is a GS40. That's also 219. Now the difference between this setup here and these is that these are components without a crossover. If I decided that I wanted a crossover, then I could buy this GS410C crossover, which would give me a crossover and the ability to feed them from one channel of an amplifier. So this is designed exclusively for the GS10 and GS40. And that's like another 219 bucks too. So it ends up being like $660 for the AudioFrog versus $750 for the Morel Hybrid. I really like AudioFrog. I've been very impressed with my my component set that I have, or sorry, my my subwoofer that I have. So I think that I would purchase them again. Now looking at the technical details, the frequency response on this one is a little higher. So it starts off at 90 Hertz, so it's lower than the Focals, but it's definitely higher than the Morels. So I would lose a little bit of low-end punch on the AudioFrogs, potentially. That being said, not all of these are measured the same, but it looks pretty clear that, you know, I'm going to drop from about 90 decibels down to about 73 decibels, which is huge, going down to 50 Hertz. So my 90 Hertz is right here, which is my 3 decibel roll off. So, you know, I'm not sure exactly how these are going to sound compared to the Morels, but it is definitely an option. You know, these are about 440 bucks versus 750 bucks if I run them as fully active. So I could do that as well. And if I don't do these, then that ends up totaling, let's do this, Excel do math for us, 638 bucks is what I'd be into the system for. So that's really not too bad. Now I'm using a lot of hardware that I already had, like the Bit Ten, the amplifier, and it could be argued that if I went this route, I could sell the One 130.4 and the Alpine PDX-M6 and the subwoofer and the Bit Ten and all of the other stuff. And this contains rear speakers while this one doesn't, but I really don't think that the rear speakers are going to be necessary, and I don't think that I'm going to miss them at all. I haven't missed them in my last 3 cars, so I don't expect to in this one. So I don't know. I'm going to have to figure out what I want to do. I think I'm going to go the aftermarket route, and I'm going to reuse my Bit Ten, my One 130.4, because there's just very few unknowns there. I mean, the other thing is I could actually use these speakers, these UP C42MB-FRTs in this set, and it would only be $250 for the front speakers then. So that is also an option too. So these guys here, see if this, yeah. So these are 90 to 25K, and they support 60 to 120 watts. So that's kind of an interesting option. I could use these, and I could use the crossover or not use the crossover. I could run them as fully active off of my 4-channel amp, or I can run this crossover with them. I could technically use my 4-channel amp to run my sub with its other 2 channels, or I could make it run the you know, the speakers, the factory subwoofer that's up in the kick panel. I could do something with that potentially. So I have a lot of different options here and some things that I need to think about, but you know, this is kind of what I'm trying to figure out, get everything ordered, and I, you know, want to make sure that I'm only doing this once. So I think the best option is for me to go with a full aftermarket setup. I can do some videos on the tuning and adjustments of that. It'll be usable in future cars rather than the match and the harnesses and stuff like that, which are kind of dependent on specific European vehicles. The front components, these match speakers, while they're way less expensive, they're only going to be compatible with these few cars, the C-Class, the E-Class, the GLC, and the S-Class. That is it. So if I move to something different, then they're not going to drop into my new car. You know, where something like the Morels or the AudioFrogs would potentially be able to be used in other vehicles as well. So this is kind of the planning process I'm going through. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. My next video, I'll show what I chose. We'll talk about wiring, what's needed, how we're going to cable it, because there's different cabling requirements for all of these different options. And then we'll get all of that ordered, and I'll do some videos on the installation and the tuning, and, you know, kind of some last thoughts. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. You know, it enables me to be able to do stuff like this. The subscribers allow me to have you know, affiliate links and things that actually make the YouTube channel less unprofitable. I guess is probably the best way to describe it. I'm in the hole quite a bit already on the channel, so that's it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.